High school football coach Joe Kennedy has been put on paid administrative leave because he refused to stop praying in public at football games. The Bremerton School District in Washington State said the move was necessary because Kennedy's refusal to comply poses a genuine risk that the district will be liable for violating the federal and state constitutional rights of students or others.
You know, this is the land of opportunity, and I'm seeing it all stripped away because I'm an employee. They're telling me that, you know, oh, well, we'll give you a closet to go hide in. And it's like, I'm an American citizen. I'm a taxpayer. And this is my community. My kids go to that school. And you're telling me I can't do this?
Kennedy's lawyers say that the district has no right to ban the coach from personally praying, and they're ready to sue the school district.
The ball's in their court, in the school district's court. They have the opportunity to make this right, to do the right thing, to follow the law.
Meanwhile, a U.S. senator says the praying coach case is just the latest proof that Americans have become afraid of allowing any faith or religion in public.
In this generation, it's amazing to me. People have become afraid of people of faith. They're literally afraid of prayer. This coach could go out on the 50-yard line after the game this Friday night and sing Michael Jackson's song Thriller and do the dance moves, and no one would care. But for some reason, if he kneels down and prays, there's a whole group of people that are suddenly terrified of him. I would say this simple thing: people have the right to pray.
Let's go, Nate! Never before have there been so many people sitting in the stands during a Bremerton High School football game. And never before have there been so many cameras, news crews from across Western Washington and across the country, here not to cover the game. Instead, they're here to talk to the coach who's been sidelined by the school district. Joe Kennedy was put on paid leave on Wednesday because of his decision to continue praying after each game, despite district orders to stop.
I'm willing to take this as far as to go to defend the rights of the Constitution, till the end. If it comes back one way or another, I fought the good fight.
In the larger than usual crowd at this game, almost everyone expressed support for Kennedy. A few parents seem frustrated that the controversy is taking attention away from the players on what was supposed to be Bremerton Senior Night.
It should have never came to this.
And in the fourth quarter came the arrival of a group from the Satanic Temple of Seattle, who said they showed up at the request of several students and teachers who wanted their beliefs represented as well.
We just wanted to meet the students who invited us out here and show that we support them in doing that. But we'll leave peaceably if they want us to.
But they left before the end of the game and before Coach Kennedy knelt down in front of his seat in the bleachers, bowed his head, and prayed. And Coach Kennedy and his attorneys have said they feel his right to religious freedom is being violated, and so they are moving forward with legal action against the school district. We should also mention, amidst all the off-the-field drama, that Bremerton High School won this football game tonight, which means they are now headed to the playoffs. And Coach Kennedy told me after the game that he has never been more proud of this team.
Jordan Woolley originally answered the question, there is a God, in two ways.
I said that it was a fact or opinion.
Two ways because?
Based on my religion and based on what I think and believe, I did not think that it was a commonplace assertion.
Woolley says her 7th grade reading teacher said both her answers were wrong, and that Woolley had to admit God wasn't real.
I didn't really know what to do. So first thing I did was tell my mom.
Jordan's mom, Chantel, couldn't believe it.
That a kid was literally graded against her faith in God in a classroom. So who would want that to be known?
Today I was given an assignment in school that questioned my faith.
Jordan made sure all of Katy and beyond knew about what happened by testifying last night in front of Katy ISD's Board of Education meeting.
So the kids were like caught in a catch-22. If they argued for their faith, then they were being told that they were arguing against their faith, and that happened in the classroom.
Today, Katy ISD released a statement saying in part that the assignment was intended to encourage critical thinking and dialogue and not question any student's religious beliefs. Quote, still, this does not excuse the fact that this ungraded activity was ill-conceived, and because of that, its intent had been misconstrued.
I love reading personally, so for me to have to fail reading because of what my beliefs are just shocks me.
American boots will soon be on the ground in Syria. President Obama has ordered about 50 U.S. Special Operations troops to northern Syria to aid Kurdish units and others battling the ISIS terror army. Mr. Obama had previously said he would not send U.S. ground forces to Syria. A White House spokesman says the special forces will not be serving as frontline combat troops, but, quote, there's no denying the serious risk they will be facing.
And President Obama has made a very straightforward and simple decision entirely in keeping with his originally stated policy that we must defeat and destroy Daesh. It is not a decision to enter into Syria's civil war. It is not an action or a choice focused on Assad. It is focused exclusively on Daesh and on augmenting our ability to be able to more rapidly attack Daesh and do a better job of eliminating Daesh and its influence in that region.
There are a variety of ways that the United States and our coalition partners can offer our support to those local forces, whether it's resupplying them or conducting airstrikes in support of their operations on the ground. And the President did make a decision to intensify that support by offering a small number of U.S. Special Operations military personnel to offer them some advice and assistance on the ground as they take the fight to ISIL.
President Barack Obama has authorized sending fewer than 50 U.S. troops to northern Syria. They'll be deployed as advisors to the foreign-backed militants fighting the Syrian government. The group will be the first American boots on the ground stationed in Syria. Meanwhile, U.S. Representative Mac Thornberry has said that an intensified U.S. effort to fight the ISIL in Syria is long overdue. He said the Obama administration does not have a coherent strategy to fight terrorist groups.
Special forces. This will include some aircraft as they're going to be operating out of our base in southern Turkey. Should we just send them a fruit basket instead? This doesn't seem to me to be much of an offering to help the rebels in Syria.
No, Cheryl, that's you've nailed it. This is not a major shift in policy. This is more incrementalism, as President Obama strives to do the absolute minimum he can to shore up a catastrophically failing policy. And these 50 men on the ground, they'll make a local difference. It all helps a little bit, but it's not going to be strategically decisive. And oh, by the way, when you send in our special operators, you don't tell people. It's supposed to be a secret. When you're announcing you're sending up to 50 special forces into eastern Syria, that's like an invitation to Islamic State to kidnap those guys or kill them. It's just absolutely not how you do it. It's preposterous and weak and a sign of this president's overall inability to deal with reality.
I just want to ask you a little bit about your reaction to President Obama's decision with regards to Syria, putting special forces there. What do you think about it?
Well, I think we have a president just doesn't know what he's doing. You either do it or you don't do it. 50 people. He puts 50 people.
So you would put more?
You either do it or you don't do it.
Okay. What about...
هم يريدون أن يكون النفط والغاز وكل الموارد الطبيعية في العالم العربي والإسلامي في قبضتهم. في الظاهر النفط والغاز هو للحكومات العربية والإسلامية، ولكن في الواقع هو لأمريكا وشركات النفط الكبرى في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية من خلال شركاتها في المنطقة. الحرب الدائرة الآن في المنطقة قائدها الحقيقي هي الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية، وهي التي تدعم وهي التي تساند وهي الضابط الإيقاع وهي المنسق وهي التي تدير كل هذه المعركة في منطقتنا.
The Russian foreign minister has warned that the U.S. sending troops to Syria can create the risk of a proxy war in the Middle East. Sergei Lavrov says that Washington has made the decision unilaterally and without any reference to the Syrian leadership.
Washington's military brinkmanship in the South China Sea could spark a real war with Beijing. Well, that's according to China's Navy chief. The warning came after an American warship passed through disputed waters, which Beijing claims is their own. China has built several artificial islands in the Spratly Archipelago. The area is also contested by the Philippines, though, as well, which is closely allied with Washington. And the US has already rejected Beijing's claims to the disputed waters. Russia. The strategy is to deter Moscow's aggression, according to sources. Fox News military analyst Captain Chuck Nash with me now. So are we, sir, inching closer to a conflict, a direct one with Russia?
Anytime troops from opposite sides of the table start to close on each other, there's always the opportunity for miscalculation. In this case, the Russians have been violating a 1994 agreement that to not put troops directly on their border. So now, with all of the things that have been going on with the Crimea, Latvia or Lithuania and Estonia are getting very, very nervous, and so they're asking NATO for support. They're the new NATO members. Article 5 plays in, which is mutual defense. So we'll see.
Okay, we'll see. Is this part of some sort of revisionist move by the U.S. because perhaps we didn't act quickly enough to check Russia in Syria?
I think you put your finger on it, that's it. And we're playing catch-up ball all over the place, including now sending a destroyer inside the 12-mile limit from an artificially constructed island that is, you know, millions of tons of sand on top of a coral reef that China's claiming. So we're trying to play catch-up ball, and when you do that, you tend to use ideas that were great at one time, but their time stamp has expired, and now you're using what was a good idea, and now, because of timing, could be a very bad idea.
It's interesting. The United States is deploying troops now and NATO right up against Russia's borders, and saying they're not trying to pick a fight. Not only are they not preparing to fight, I mean, they're clearly preparing to fight a war with Russia, and they're not only not preparing to fight it at the old battle lines, but right at Russia's door while they talk about Russia provoking. It's fantastic, really, you know, in the literal sense of the word, as in fantasy. But the problem is that most people in the country here have no idea that this is going on. You have this piece in the Wall Street Journal. You'll see a piece in the Times from time to time. There'll be an occasional reference in CNN. Fox, if they do it at all, will be advertising the food in the mesh tent or something. And MSNBC will float it to show that Democrats can be as tough as Republicans. No one actually discusses the whole cloth, first of all, that there is this army that has been deployed to Russia's borders with materiel and manpower. The rapid strike force just was doubled in the last few weeks, for example. Now these actual NATO troops, instead of allied troops with NATO's command and control, being deployed in the Baltics and elsewhere up against Russia's border, is a very bad sign. People don't generally place their army at your door unless they plan to fight a war with you. And, of course, a war between NATO and Russia probably would spell, if not the end of humanity, the end of any possibility of a comfortable future for humanity.
We begin with breaking news overnight. The crash of a Russian plane in Egypt with more than 200 people on board. It happened just minutes into the flight. Russian President Vladimir Putin expressed his condolences to the families of the victims killed when the Airbus A321 went down.
Well, the plane suddenly dropped 1.5 kilometers before disappearing from radars. The website Flight Radar shows this change in altitude moments before the plane came down. Egyptian authorities are now saying the plane crashed almost vertically.
Egyptian authorities now saying they have found the wreckage. Let's bring in RT's Ilya Petrenka, who's been monitoring this story from the get-go. Ilya, we understand you can tell us a bit more about those people on board the plane.
Yes, the Russian media has published a list of the people that were on that plane. And according to reports from those media sources, all of them have died. And of course, the 2 hotlines were opened in St. Petersburg for the relatives. But for them, this is little compensation, but at least they'll be able to get more information on the victims of that plane crash.
An Egyptian branch of the Islamic State claimed responsibility for the downing of the Russian plane. The group made the announcement in a statement circulated by supporters on Twitter. It also provided video footage it claimed was the moment it shot down the plane. Egyptian security sources earlier on Saturday said investigations suggested the plane crashed due to a technical fault. Russian officials made similar suggestions and appeared suspicious of the Islamic State's claim. Experts say the terrorist group in Sinai don't have surface-to-air missiles with enough range to reach the plane, which was at an altitude of more than 9,000 meters. But experts say they can't rule out the possibility of ISIL planting explosives on the plane.
Palestinians have taken to the streets in the southern city of Khan Yunis to show support for the uprising, which has been unleashed by fellow Palestinians all over the West Bank and Jerusalem al-Quds since early October. The rally was organized by both Hamas and the Islamic Jihad resistance movements to voice their solidarity with the uprising in the occupied territories.
This joint demonstration comes in support of the Palestinian men and women who are defending Al-Aqsa. It also assures on the Palestinian national unity as well as the Palestinians' choice of resistance.
The political factions gathered in the demonstration have urged the Palestinian Authority to end all kinds of cooperation with Israel, including the Oslo Accords, the Paris Treaty, and most importantly the security coordination, as a clear response to the Israeli atrocities practiced against Palestinian civilians.
The Palestinian Authority should reconsider their negotiation approach and listen to the voice of the Palestinian heroes fighting the Israeli occupation with bare hands. Moreover, they should support the uprising which aims to end Israel's occupation of Palestine.
The Public Front to Liberate Palestine has also stressed that Gaza will not be obviated away from the uprising, despite the agony and hardship people there endure because of the years-long Israeli siege. These hundreds have taken to the streets of Khan Yunis as a part of consequent effort to support the Aqsa uprising in both Jerusalem al-Quds and the occupied West Bank.
نأمل في قناة الأقصى الفضائية أن يكون هذا الاستوديو المتواضع جزءا من تحريك الشارع الفلسطيني في الضفة الغربية نحو المظاهرات ونحو الاشتباك مع الاحتلال الصهيوني. هذا جهد مقل، لكن نسعى أن يكون هناك تطوير أكثر في هذا الإطار.
Now, Israel has authorized the construction of more settler units in the occupied West Bank. Israel's Interior Ministry said it has legalized the building of 800 more homes in 4 separate settlements in the occupied territory. It added that the decision was made 2 weeks ago, but just recently announced Friday. Israeli officials also expressed hope that the plan would trigger the beginning of a new round of settlement construction. Netanyahu already faces major criticism for refusing to stop settlement expansions. According to international law, the settlement construction is illegal, and the EU has repeatedly condemned Israel over its refusal to abide by this.
Meanwhile, Israeli right-wing organizations are reportedly calling on Tel Aviv to take over the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound amid rising violence in the occupied territories. Zionist organizations also asked Israeli settlers to continue praying at the mosque. Israelis are banned from praying at the third holiest site for Muslims. The Facebook page of one of the right-wing groups is full of posts calling for destroying the Al-Aqsa Mosque and raising a Jewish temple instead. Earlier this week, Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister Zipi Hotovli called the Al-Aqsa Mosque, quote, the center of Israeli sovereignty, the capital of Israel. Violence flares up in the occupied territories as Israeli settlers continue desecrating the mosque on an almost daily basis. Israeli forces have also imposed tighter entry restrictions to the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound on Palestinians.
360. 65, excuse me, look. 65 taxi. 300.
300? 300?
Yes.
Okay.
Empty passages. Idle vendors. Business is bad.
Since 8 o'clock, 7:30 in the morning, till now, as you see it, customers, zero, not even one.
3:30, we are closing the stores. Nobody in the street, nobody in the stores.
Conflict drives customers away, even if it's subtle. Pay attention to what's happening in the background here. The Palestinian-Israeli conflict is not new, but its commercial ramifications present a perennial challenge.
There's always something. The first Lebanon war, the second Lebanon war, last year operation in Gaza. We always have problems with them.
A prime example of the effect of the conflict is right here. This is a crossroads in Jerusalem's Old City, leading to the main religious sites for Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. Normally it would be packed with tourists, but you can see from the situation around me, it's not.
The same factor compelling many tourists to visit is also driving the current flare-up. Religious sites. The tension is over control of those sites and the issue of encroachment. Local economists say that during the last drawn-out conflict between the sides at the start of the century, combined economies slowed down by 7%. With an eye on the approaching Christmas holiday, vendors are hoping and praying that the situation calms soon and stays that way.
Roughly 20,000 anti-migrant protesters took to the streets on Monday evening in the eastern German city of Dresden. They accused Chancellor Angela Merkel of treason for her policy of opening Germany's doors to a surge of asylum seekers. The demonstrators were mostly supporters of the xenophobic movement Pegida. Pegida stands for Patriotic Europeans Against the Islamization of the Occident. Monday's rally marked the one-year anniversary of its founding. Meanwhile, about 14,000 demonstrators marched in protests against Pegida on the same night. They called for more openness and compassion. German politicians have warned the public of the Pegida rally and expressed growing concern over an escalation of anti-immigrant violence.
Handguns and rifle sales are spiking in Austria, with some shops reporting they're even running out of stock. Here's what one shop owner says.
Ja, das kann ich bestätigen, dass in Österreich die Waffen verstärkt nachgefragt werden. Ich habe meine Umsätze im September verdoppelt und im Oktober 15 noch einmal verdoppelt, obwohl der Oktober noch nicht vorbei ist. Die meisten Menschen, die in den letzten Wochen zu mir kommen, um sich beraten zu lassen oder um Waffen zu kaufen, geben als Grund an, ich frage jedes Mal danach, die allgemein vorherrschende spezielle Situation, die wir gerade in Österreich haben.
And the current situation mentioned there is the influx of refugees entering Austria. Up to 8,000 cross the border every day, with authorities saying that number could soon rise to 12,000. In the face of the migrant crisis, the country's government seems to be retreating on some of its own ideas on how to tackle the problem. 2 months ago, the Austrian Chancellor was an outspoken critic of Hungary's initiative to build fences on its border. Werner Faymann said then that it would solve nothing. Fast forward to the end of October, and the Chancellor announces the start of a special construction at its border with Slovenia. That while still insisting that fences have no place in Europe.
We're from Bosnia.
Dabei war das Verhalten Österreichs in den vergangenen Tagen nicht in Ordnung.
Wir sind das Volk! Wir sind das Volk! Wir sind das Volk! Wir haben das Volk! Wir sind das Volk!
4 people have been killed and 16 injured after fires broke out at 3 separate residential buildings in Germany. Reports say the homes were inhabited by asylum seekers and foreigners. RT's Laura Smith reports.
So we've seen what can only really be called a spate of fires across Germany overnight. As you mentioned, there have been some people killed in an apartment block which possibly housed foreigners. Police were quick to come forward and say that they didn't think there had been any xenophobic motive behind that attack. 5 people seriously injured in Gudensberg. They were not refugees apparently, but it was a building that housed Polish and Bulgarian people and their families. And a house where asylum seekers did live in Baden-Württemberg was also burnt down, but nobody was hurt in that fire. And this is really taking place against a background of unease. These are the latest in a spate of fires across Germany, at least some of which have been attacks on buildings which are designated to house refugees and asylum seekers. This is not a problem that's entirely confined to Germany. Sweden has also seen a similar spate of attacks. 4 buildings that were accommodating were attacked there inside a week. Luckily, Sweden so far has seen no casualties, but now the authorities there say they no longer want to disclose where they're housing asylum seekers for fear of similar attacks.
Another building supposed to house refugees has gone up in flames in Sweden. The incident happened in a town near the capital Stockholm in a former child's summer camp. No one was injured in the fire, although local police said the blaze would be investigated as arson. Attacks on refugee shelters have been on the rise in Sweden.
So like we saw in Germany, a suspicious fire in the middle of the night. This was itself home to 14 refugees. A fire in the middle of the night which took 5 hours to put out, and no one thankfully seriously injured like we saw in Germany, but everyone involved was treated for smoke inhalation. You can see some of the shocking damage. How are you? Where are you from?
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
Yeah.
You believe that someone started a fire?
We don't know. We are living there, yeah, in the night, 3 o'clock and 2 o'clock. We saw this situation in the first time in Sweden. We are afraid. It's my life is also there is not safe. Jesus said no security, yeah, there is in the camp. No police, yeah, no police station. No anybody here.
Well, authorities are still investigating what exactly happened here, but what this incident shows is that an otherwise tranquil area can become tense very quickly, and indeed it seems to show that there are those elements within Swedish society which would like to use violence to try and bash this image of Sweden as warm and compassionate and humane and civil in welcoming this refugee flow. Next year it's expected the country will have 360,000 new people arriving as part of this refugee influx.
If it's coming too fast, people can't adapt, and then they get, this attitude that makes.
So it doesn't surprise you that some people may use violence to reject this?
No. Human being is human being. It is in the nature to defend, even if they don't know why they're doing it.
Are you afraid of the refugees coming to Munkedal?
Yeah, a little.
Why?
Because I'm dog.
Why does that concern you?
Because they think I'm not from Sweden from beginning.
They will assume that you're a refugee because you're not pale-skinned. And do you think you may face discrimination? Is that what you're saying?